The world is slowly getting the better of the COVID-19 pandemic, with vaccines now in use in some parts of the world. India is betting on a number of COVID-19 vaccine candidates. One of the front-runner vaccines for use in India is the one developed by the University of Oxford's vaccine research team at the Jenner Institute in partnership with Swedish-British pharma major AstraZeneca. The Serum Institute of India, the world's largest vaccine manufacturer by volume, has been contracted by AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford to manufacture the vaccine for India and low and middle-income countries. The vaccine candidate has been named Covishield in India. In late November 2020, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the Serum Institute's manufacturing facility in Pune to take stock of the progress being made by it in manufacturing vaccines against COVID-19. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has been made by taking a common cold virus known as adenovirus from chimpanzees and deleting about 20% of the virus's instructions. In this episode of BioQuest, we will explore the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine candidate and understand the technology used in its development. In late November 2020, AstraZeneca and University of Oxford announced interim trial data from phase 3 human trials of its COVID-19 vaccine candidate. The data was based on trials conducted on more than 23,000 volunteers. The results meant yet another vaccine has been developed at high speed, joining the ranks of Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines. The vaccine was developed in around 10 months, a process that normally takes around a decade.
If you'd said to me a year ago that in 2020, anybody would make a vaccine for a global pandemic in months rather than years, I would have thought that that was hugely challenging and difficult. 3 groups have done it already. There may be a 4th by the end of the year. It is quite remarkable. And it can only happen if extraordinary support is provided. And that support has been forthcoming from all quarters.
Adenovirus as a vector for vaccine was being tried for HIV. It was also tried for Ebola. And naturally, the platforms for development of this kind of technology using some other virus were already available. And therefore, they had just got to use a different organism to produce these vaccines, and that's the reason why you required less time to develop a vaccine.
At the heart of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is a virus that causes common cold in chimpanzees.
AstraZeneca used chimpanzee adenovirus that was obtained from its stools. The reasons are very simple. Adenovirus is a common infection that you see in colds among human beings. If you use a virus which is taken from a human being, then perhaps some of us will have already got those antibodies against these viruses. So immunization or that vaccination will not be successful. Therefore, taking the virus from chimpanzee, to which our human body has not been exposed at all, helps us in ensuring that the take of a vaccine will actually be successful.
The virus is modified so that it cannot multiply and cause disease in the body. It is then loaded up with the gene for the coronavirus spike protein, the club-shaped part that dots the surface of the virus and is used to penetrate the human cells. When the vaccine is injected, the virus delivers the coronavirus gene to human cells, which start to churn out the spike protein. These are detected by the immune system, which produces antibodies and other responses that can attack the real coronavirus should the person become infected in the future.
AstraZeneca vaccine or all other vaccines, excepting one vaccine, which is yet to be developed completely, are 2-dose vaccines. And this approach is called as prime boost approach. You prime an individual, which means sensitize an individual's immune system by giving first dose, and then after 21 or 28 days, depending on which vaccine are we talking about. If it is AstraZeneca Serum Institute vaccine, it's 28 days time after which we give a second dose of this vaccine, and this dose acts as a boost. And what do we mean by boost? It's like a reminder to the immune system that are you ready? If you are not, please try to prepare yourself.
Oxford University carried out phase 3 human trials in different groups of volunteers and put out 3 sets of data on the efficacy of its vaccine. In the larger group of nearly 9,000 volunteers who were given 2 full doses 4 weeks apart, the efficacy was found to be 62%. The smaller group of less than 3,000 participants were given a half dose and then a full dose of the vaccine. Here too, the doses were given 4 weeks apart. But this regime appeared to provide the most protection or efficacy in the trial of around 90%. On average, the vaccine was 70.4% effective in preventing COVID-19.
We had the whole institute pretty well working on this vaccine. In Oxford, we had hundreds of people involved in the trial, 19 trial centres around the UK, 2 major centres overseas in Brazil and in South Africa, particularly in Johannesburg, other sites in India, in Kenya, a huge US trial organised by our commercial partner, AstraZeneca. That's what it takes. But it's extraordinary that it has happened, and happily today we know the vaccine works and works rather well.
We've supported Oxford University and AstraZeneca all the way through to try to get this vaccine to be brought forward safely but of course also as fast as is safely possible, and to get this result that overall effectiveness 70%, but in one formulation of doses effectiveness of 90%. That is very good news for everyone.
But the jubilation over what was being described by its developers as a vaccine for the world soon made way for intrigue as a surprise development played out. AstraZeneca admitted that the half dose was never intended to be given in the trials. In other words, the nearly 3,000 participants on whom the 90% efficacy result was based were never supposed to be given the half dose in the first place.
If you look at the original study design, it used 2 full doses. So we have to use only the 2 full dose study as far as the efficacy interpretation is concerned, that is 62%. The half-dose full dose study arm, which was an accident, it involved only 2,000 plus study patients, which is not adequate to come to a scientific conclusion. So as of now, we have to take the 62% efficacy as the actual scientific data.
In a statement, Oxford University explained that some of the vials used in the trial did not have the right concentration of vaccine, so some volunteers got a half dose. The university said that it discussed the problem with regulators and agreed to complete the late-stage trial with 2 groups. The manufacturing problem has been corrected. So why did the error happen? Different doses of the vaccine were mistakenly used in the trial. Some volunteers were given shots half the plant strength in error. While most of the volunteers in the trial got the correct dose for both of their 2 shots, some didn't. Yet, that wrong dose turned out to be more effective.
The 2 doses were used in different settings. The higher response rate was observed in the United Kingdom and the lower response rate in Brazil. The data from UK are much smaller. They immunized only about 2,740 people each with the vaccine and the placebo. So the 92% that was observed there would have wider confidence intervals, and the confidence intervals could extend much lower. On the other hand, in Brazil, where 62% efficacy data came from, about 9,000 persons each received the vaccine and the placebo. It is likely that in Brazil, a larger proportion of patients had previous exposure to adenoviruses. These vaccines have an adenovirus backbone. So if people have previously had exposure, they would have a lower response rate because the previous pre-existing antibodies could kill the virus, the vaccine virus itself.
AstraZeneca said answers would be found via a new global trial using the lower dose regimen.
This is a common thing in medicine. When something unexpected is found, then we say that the trial has generated a hypothesis. It's a hypothesis generating finding. So we have now a hypothesis based on the data that we already have that a half dose followed by a full dose may work better. This has to be confirmed in a confirmatory trial, and that's exactly what AstraZeneca is planning to do. This is a standard method. This is how we do things. And surely, if the results are confirmed in that trial, then we accept that and we go along, and we would then use this new regimen for everything.
The dosage-related findings by AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford did not change anything in India, with the Serum Institute of India going ahead with its full-dose regimen. AstraZeneca halted its human trials twice. As per the company's spokesperson, the clinical trial was briefly paused in July 2020, when one volunteer in the trial was confirmed to have a previously undiagnosed case of multiple sclerosis. The spokesperson denied a report that claimed the AstraZeneca CEO had stated the pause was due to a participant suffering from transverse myelitis, which is inflammation of the spinal cord. After a trial participant in the UK reportedly developed a serious neurological illness. Acknowledging the second pause in its trials, AstraZeneca stated, as part of the ongoing randomized controlled global trials of the Oxford coronavirus vaccine, a standard review process triggered a pause to vaccination to allow review of safety data. This is a routine action which has to happen whenever there is a potentially unexplained illness in one of the trials while it is investigated, ensuring we maintain the integrity of the trials. In large trials, illnesses will happen by chance but must be independently reviewed. We are working to expedite the review of the single event to minimize any potential impact on the trial timeline. The trials being carried out in India by the Serum Institute were too stopped briefly in September 2020 after the Drugs Controller General of India's intervention. Experts say temporary holds of large medical studies are not unusual, and investigating any serious or unexpected reaction is a mandatory part of safety testing. Trials by AstraZeneca and Serum Institute of India resumed later in a staggered manner after a go-ahead by authorities. The Serum Institute of India's human trials had a brush with controversy in November 2020, when a 40-year-old Chennai-based man who had volunteered for the human trial being carried out by the institute alleged he had suffered a virtual neurological breakdown and impairment of cognitive functions and sent a legal notice to Serum Institute of India and others seeking a compensation of 5 crore rupees and a halt to the trial. Serum Institute denied the allegations, saying the incident with the Chennai volunteer, though highly unfortunate, was in no way induced by the vaccine. It further stated that the vaccine won't be released for mass use unless it is proven immunogenic and safe. Regulators in India also found that the volunteer's medical condition was not related to the shot administered to him, and the Indian Council of Medical Research explained why the incident did not necessitate stoppage of human trials being conducted by the company.
Initial causality assessment findings did not necessitate stoppage of these trials.
Even today, adverse events take place in the universal immunization program. Even though vaccines against tetanus, polio and other diseases are being used for several decades, adverse events happen in vaccination. What matters is the government's strategy to address them. There are challenges in terms of communication by the centre, states and union territories. It is important that disinformation campaign, work of anti-vaccine lobby and attempts to create apprehensions about the safety and efficacy of vaccine is effectively countered and right information reaches people.
Controversies aside, AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford have claimed the vaccine candidate has no serious safety concerns. The safety analysis comes from a database of 24,000 volunteers who took part in the clinical trials in the UK, Brazil and South Africa, with follow-ups since April.
The adenovirus platform that we use for our vaccine has been around for decades. The first vaccine was given in 1991. So we have decades and tens of thousands of person-years of experience prior to this trial using this type of vaccine, and the safety record has been really excellent.
The vaccine developers also said that their vaccine works well in preventing severe forms of COVID-19 and hospitalization.
Primarily looked at prevention of clinical disease, and those were all relatively mild infections. But there were a number of people who ended up going to hospital, being hospitalized with severe disease. All of those people were in the control group. So that provides initial evidence that the vaccine's working particularly well against severe COVID and against hospitalization.
When the vaccine is injected, the vaccine is delivering the coronavirus gene into the human cells. And what happens after that is it in turn churns out the spike protein, and these are detected by the immune system of the body, which produces, ultimately the antibodies and other responses which attack, the coronavirus. That means the fresh coronavirus infection whenever it happens. So these antibodies are going to play a protective role.
The collaboration also claims that the vaccine protects even against asymptomatic infection.
The other finding, and I think this is novel for any coronavirus vaccine, is that we were able to measure the frequency of asymptomatic infection in the vaccinees and controls. And that again showed significant protection. In other words, far fewer people with clinically silent infection, but PCR positive in the vaccination group. The reason that's important is that asymptomatic infection rate is a good measure of potential to transmit the infection. Probably most people transmitting are asymptomatic because there are so many asymptomatic people. If we can prevent that, and the early indications are that we may well be able to do that, the impact on the epidemic as a whole may be greater than you would get from just preventing people dying or getting diseased.
AstraZeneca is assessing the impact on efficacy if one of the doses is used from other vaccine manufacturer such as Sputnik V. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is based on technology that is different from the mRNA technology on which the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are based. Besides technology, there are differences in their storage and transportation temperatures and pricing. The vaccines are based on different technology. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine uses an adenovirus to carry genetic fragments of coronavirus into the body, whereas the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines use pieces of genetic material called messenger RNA or mRNA to prompt the body to make synthetic pieces of the coronavirus and stimulate an immune response. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine's 70% average efficacy was significantly lower than the 94.5% efficacy reported by Moderna and 95% efficacy reported by Pfizer. But the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine scores over the other two vaccines in some significant ways. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine can be stored in standard refrigerators, making distribution far easier. Moderna's vaccine too can be stored in a fridge at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for a month. But Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine must be stored at -70 to -80 degrees Celsius. The Oxford vaccine can thus be shipped more readily around the globe using existing supply chains. It can use the normal supply chains that are currently in use across countries such as India for supplying this vaccine, especially to rural areas where cold chain logistics are weak. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is also cheaper than the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. AstraZeneca aims to sell the Oxford vaccine to low and middle income countries at a maximum cost of $3 a dose, whereas Pfizer-BioNTech have priced their vaccine at about $20 per dose, and Moderna has priced its vaccine at around $25 per dose.
In terms of the pricing, the AstraZeneca vaccine seems to be almost 4 to 5 times affordable compared to the other two vaccines. Its production capacity also is ramped up to about 100 to 200 million doses per month. Compared to that, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, at least in the beginning, they're able to supply only 30 million doses.
Pfizer and Moderna seem to score in efficacy, but Oxford AstraZeneca would score in terms of storage, transport, and possibly pricing. The other way to look at it is we don't look at all of these. We look at what in science we call effectiveness, which takes into account how many people can get the vaccine and then benefit from it. Because of the temperature and storage conditions and transport conditions, Oxford vaccine can be given to many more people, and even if it has a lower efficacy, overall effectiveness would be possibly much higher in our setting for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine compared to Pfizer and Moderna.
Governments will be purchasing this vaccine and making it available to the populations of those countries, but also Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunisation, will be supplied with vaccine, and they can make vaccine available to low-income countries. The vaccine is not very expensive to manufacture, and also no profit will be made during the pandemic period, which also helps to keep the price of this vaccine very low.
The Oxford-AstraZeneca partnership has reached agreements to supply the vaccine globally. It aims to supply 3 billion doses by 2021. AstraZeneca has pledged 300 million doses of its vaccine to COVAX, which is a partnership between Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the World Health Organization, and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, that is CEPI, for ensuring equitable distribution to 92 developing countries. The only other known vaccine developer that has made a pledge of a similar scale is France's Sanofi at 200 million doses. The Serum Institute of India and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation would also provide up to 200 million doses of the AstraZeneca and Novavax candidate vaccines to lower-income countries. Yet another COVID-19 vaccine that has disrupted all previous records with its fast pace of development is Russia's Sputnik V vaccine. This vaccine candidate has attracted awe, surprise, and cynicism alike. The Sputnik V vaccine is named after the Soviet-era satellite that triggered the space race. It was developed by the Russian government-backed Gamaleya National Research Institute of Epidemiology and Microbiology, and its production funded by Russia's sovereign wealth fund, Russian Direct Investment Fund. Registered by the Ministry of Health of Russia, it became the world's first registered vaccine against COVID-19. The vaccine received formal regulatory approval from Russian authorities in August 2020, the same month when Russian President Vladimir Putin had said that one of his daughters had been inoculated with Sputnik V and was fine afterwards. Russian developers claim the vaccine is based on a safe and tested human adenovirus vector platform. They say the uniqueness of the vaccine lies in the use of two different human adenoviral vectors, which allows for a stronger and long-term immune response as compared to the vaccines using one and the same vector for 2 doses. They claim that in order to ensure lasting immunity, Russian scientists came up with a breakthrough idea to use 2 different types of adenovirus vectors for the first and second vaccination, boosting the effect of the vaccine.
If I give first time this adenovirus based vaccine and assuming that the protection doesn't last for a long period of time, let's say few years, and then I will have to give a new booster to ensure that the immune response persists in that individual, perhaps it is possible that if I give the same virus, the immune response will not come during booster. So you may have to use different kind of a vaccine or different set of adenoviruses, like you may have to switch between those two, whether it is first is AstraZeneca and then you may have to give Sputnik, or first if it is Sputnik, you may have to give AstraZeneca vaccine second time.
Based on the second interim analysis of data obtained 28 days after administering the first dose, and 7 days after the second dose, they pegged the efficacy of the Sputnik V vaccine at 91.4%. Preliminary data on volunteers on the 42nd day after the first dose, equivalent to 21 days after the second dose, by when they have already formed a stable immune response, indicates a higher efficacy rate of above 95%.
We need to do a long-term follow-up of these studies because this vaccine is fairly new in nature, and longer, follow-up is required in order to prove the efficacy of this vaccine. That means when we are talking of 91% and 95%, we need to do long-term follow-up.
A Lancet study published on 4th September 2020 reported that the two-part Sputnik V was able to trigger both an antibody as well as T-cell immune response in recipients without producing any serious side effects. However, certain side effects of Sputnik V were acknowledged by Russian authorities that called their occurrence predictable. A September 15, 2020 report by the Moscow Times highlighted that 1 in 7 volunteers had complained of side effects after taking the Sputnik V vaccine. It quoted the Russian health minister as saying that approximately 14% volunteers complained of weakness and muscle pain for 24 hours and an occasional increase in body temperature, but the symptoms leveled off by the next day. But developers of the vaccine say trials show the vaccine has no long-term side effects.
The vaccines which are manufactured on the adenovirus platform, they are associated with much less side effects. That means it is only associated with cough, cold, mild fever and all, and usually these symptoms, they subside in 24 hours. So in long term, this is supposed to be a promising vaccine.
Sputnik V is a 2-dose vaccine, and the 2 doses are given 21 days apart. In dry form, the vaccine can be stored at a temperature of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. The cost of 1 dose of the vaccine for international markets has been pegged at less than $10.
The storage conditions are fine for us. 2 to 8 degrees is something where we store most of our vaccines, and we have good cold chain capacity for that temperature. So affordability purely depends on how much we need. For a country of the size of India, if we can get something even a few cents lower price than this, then it makes sense to us to go for something that is cheaper.
Russia entered into agreements with countries including India for Phase 2 and Phase 3 human trials of Sputnik V and for the vaccine's production and distribution in those countries. In September 2020, Hyderabad-based Indian pharmaceutical company Dr. Reddy's and RDIF agreed to conduct clinical trials of the vaccine and agreed on the rights for distribution of the first 100 million doses in India. Russia transported the vaccine from Moscow to New Delhi before human trials of the vaccine started in India in early December 2020. Russia aims to produce more than 1 billion doses of the shots at home and abroad in 2021. RDIF is ramping up the production of Sputnik V jointly with partners and manufacturers. In India, RDIF entered into a pact with Hyderabad-based pharmaceutical firm Hetero Labs to produce over 100 million doses of Sputnik V vaccine per year, primarily for consumption in India. While some COVID-19 vaccines are a result of Indian and foreign collaboration, some others have been developed indigenously in India, like Covaxin, that has been developed by Indian biotechnology company Bharat Biotech in collaboration with the Indian Council of Medical Research. Work on Covaxin's development started in early 2020, leading us to ask, is Covaxin safe and effective against COVID-19? Will Covaxin have any side effects? How different is Covaxin from Covishield and other COVID-19 vaccine candidates? How many doses of Covaxin will need to be administered to a person? At what temperature can Covaxin be stored and transported? And does India have the necessary infrastructure for storage, distribution and administration of vaccines like Covaxin? BioQuest will return with answers.